So I was scrolling through Marketplace because that's where a lot of cheap stuff is, and I ran across this. It was described as a Johnson outboard, $50. The owner knew nothing about it, never used it, and so of course I decided to immediately buy it. So when I went to pick it up, I really didn't look at much. The one thing I did notice is it has a tag saying Mercury Marine. So of the two words in the description of Johnson and outboard, one of those was wrong. So I knew we were off to a good start. So now let's tear into this thing and see what I got. Before we actually work on it, first thing you need anytime you work one of these small outboard motors is a trash barrel, preferably a 55-gallon drum style. Now that is not to throw the motor directly in the bin. We need that as a stand to work on it and eventually drive it. Now the other thing I noticed right off the bat is this support here. This is supposed to let the motor kick up. It's completely jammed in the wrong spot. I don't know why, but we're going to fix that so we can actually let the motor down, because right now it is stuck in this position. This support is supposed to be in here. This is where it's going to go up and catch there to be kicked up and then slide down. So we need to get it over this rib in the casting. Alright, that one's there. Let's get the other side. Maybe it is going in the bin. There we go. Alright. This tiller arm is extremely floppy, so something's wrong there. This cover, also extremely floppy, but that makes it easy to take off. And I've got a serial number. I'll look that up eventually. Maybe I should see if it's seized. Nope, turns over. That's compression. All right, we're halfway there. Now I'm noticing this prop is wet with oil, and there's been wet with oil for a while. So this is all probably full of water, in all likelihood. The shift lever is pretty wobbly, but does seem to do stuff. I can already see the clip is off it right here, so that has been off before. So someone's monkeyed with that. And it looks like it has a safety to prevent the pull starter from operating when you're in gear. So this is a relatively modern motor by my standards. We got the throttle here, let's see. Throttle works even though this thing's floppy, so that's good. A few spider webs, no problem. See inside the gas tank here. There's absolutely nothing in that tank, which is actually good. I'd rather have nothing in there than old gas. Now we have a line coming down, goes to a filter. It looks like this is an external tank mount, and that might be what they use mostly. That's the line that goes to the internal tank. We've got some kind of fitting that was supposed to be here. Oh, remote fuel shutoff. So there's supposed to be a valve in line here. I might just eliminate that external tank because all I really want is the internal one. It looks like the tank has some kind of rubber outlet. This had a hose that was a 1/4-inch hose stretched out and shoved over that. So that obviously is not the way it's supposed to work. And this hose is all pretty rotted. I'm just going to go ahead and replace it because it's only a couple inches of hose. Now, I also noticed on this tank, it's got a big patch here where looks like someone used RTV to cover up a hole. And it appears melted here where it looks like a head bolt goes. So that's always promising. In my stash of parts, a little inline fuel shut off. I'm just going to shove this in there. And that actually does feel like a nice tight fit there. So I'm going to tighten down this clamp. I'm going to have to take the lid on and off in order to shut off the fuel, but at least there is one. For transporting or things, that could be handy. Since the tank has a vent you can close off, you can lay this thing on its side in the back of a car. Alright, I'm going to tighten that up, run some new 1/4-inch line, put the filter in line with that, and I'm just going to completely eliminate the external line and simplify this a little bit. Then we're going to throw some gas in here and see what happens. It's the next day. I did a little research, pulled up the VIN number. It looks like this is a 5-horsepower Mercury made somewhere in the late 80s, maybe 1990. Got the valve there. I don't see any drips at all. I got about half a tank of gas in it. I don't see any dripping, so I'm happy with that. And then we're going to the fuel filter and then into the fuel pump. So let's go ahead and turn that on. See, oh, yep, the fuel filter's filling up. So that's a good sign. We'll look for any drips under the carb. Don't see any drips on the carburetor, so let's see what happens. Well, that's promising. Half choke maybe? It's pumping water, so we've got it's pumping water sporadically. We might want to get into that water pump, but it seems like it'll go. That's steam coming off it. That's not right. Something's not right. I've got the lower unit off this outboard. I want to check out that water pump. Now, I want to see this operate, but I don't want to have it attached to the motor. That way I can see it directly. The end is splined. What I found the best thing to do is find a piece of rubber tube. For this size, I think this is, I don't know, it might be 5/16, whatever you have lying around that fits. For bigger shafts, you can go with heater hose, something like that. And just shove that hose over the spline. On the other end, take, let's say, a drive bit for a screwdriver. If you need a bigger diameter, put a socket on the end. Shove that in the other end of the hose. If you need extra grip, put on hose clamps. But the hose will actually drive quite a bit of power to that through that shaft, and that way you can see what's going on. You don't damage the shaft, and you probably have the stuff lying around. Here's my test rig. Got the lower unit shaft with the rubber tubing connected to a drill, and a bucket of water. So we can try this out. Make sure you have the drill turning the right direction. You can double check with a pull starter, but yeah, we're pretty much ready to go here. I'm getting nothing. If I completely submerge it, I get a little bit out of there. That's not a ton of water, but it should cool this little bitty motor. But it loses suction really easy, so we got a water pump issue. Basically what you have is there is an intake screen right here, and then it goes up through this tube into this housing where the pump is. Then when you bolt this lower unit on, there's a tube that connects to here, so the water goes into the motor right from that hole. Then I got a new impeller, so we're going to put this in there, check for any obstructions, and put it all back together. Alright, now this is just in a rubber grommet here. So I'm going to pop this all off, and there's a little impeller. Oh, that one was stuck on there pretty good. We got it off here. You can see better how the fins are all deformed. So there's a little drive key on them. Turn the shaft, you can see. There's a little drive key. It goes on this flat. I usually use a little Vaseline on these just to make sure it has some lube on startup. When they're dry, these will rub and they can wear out. Once you get the water in there, the water acts as a lubricant. There's probably something better than Vaseline. If you know, let me know in the comments. I've been doing this for years and it's worked, but they probably make something specifically for it. And I sure appreciate when you guys let me know things I didn't know already, because then I learn. Make sure that's down all the way. I'm going to put Vaseline and pack this thing up a little bit. These blades are extended all the way. You actually have to squish them a little bit in order to get this housing on. Basically what I do is as I slide the housing on, I turn the shaft also in the direction it normally goes. So that way the blades fall into place. And you just sort of push slow, get that tube lined up. And the fresh rubber actually goes in pretty easy. This is pretty flexible stuff. There we go. There's a couple alignment pins in the housing. Make sure you got those in. Everything turns free. And bolt it back down. Alright, housing is tight, not too tight, and still spins freely. So, we're ready to give this a whirl and see what happens. Definitely comes through consistently. Alright, let's go ahead and put this thing back together. Okay, you're looking at the bottom of the motor now. A couple things we got to line up. The little tube for the water, got to make sure that goes in. There's also, I don't know if you can see it there, a little linkage that goes to the shifter up top that goes to the control rod in the lower unit to get your forward and reverse. And then way up at the top, there's going to be a spline where the power head actually drives the shaft. All three of those things have to line up in order to get this to properly slide in there. Alright, so let's see if we get everything to line up as we go. Alright, look, there's a little window. There's usually some kind of window. This one's a plug where you can actually see the linkage. Not only can you use that to install it, but there's adjustments to be made there. You can use the shaft on the bottom to get your splines to line up. There we go. So let's throw a couple bolts in loose. Make sure everything's in place. Alright, and that just is a block that clamps the two together, so that's easy. Alright, this should be neutral. And it's driving it, so that's not right. If you have a manual, this would be a good time to look it up and see how you're supposed to do this. But I don't have a manual and I'm just going to figure it out as I go. There's all the way down. We'll push this, not quite all the way now, just some of the way. Let's see if you can hear this too. When you put the propeller on all the way, it scrapes. So it looks like there's a shoulder in the shaft here. It looks like there's supposed to be a washer or a spacer that rides on that. And someone lost it. So basically the propeller is going in too far. It's hitting somewhere in there. So we need to space it out a little bit so we can actually tighten down the nut. Another thing I noticed when I was taking it apart, there's a castle nut that's supposed to have this cotter pin go through it. The castle nut went all the way down to the bottom. It probably should have that cotter pin somewhere in the middle. So we're missing about an 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch of space there. I dug around in my washers, found some that make a stack that when you put it on there, it turns freely. No scraping at all now. And so I can go ahead and tighten this down, but those are not stainless steel, so they will rust. I'm just going to do this temporary for now. Then we're going to make a spacer that's the right size once we make sure this motor works. Remind me to fix that soon. We got a washer. Got the castle nut. Now when it tightens down, you can see the cotter pin hole. And you can tighten it down, everything's free, spins free, no scraping, no binding. That's what we want. There we go. Done. Now this tiller arm was incredibly sloppy on this motor when I got it. It actually has bushings in here. It's supposed to be this one. They're just a rubber bushing, pretty basic, but these are ridiculously expensive. I found this one on eBay for like $7, which I could deal with, but the regular ones were way more than that. I wasn't going to go and buy another one, but this is only one, and I needed 2 of them. So I copied the dimensions from this one, hopped on the 3D printer and made myself a couple of spares that are, well, rigid, but they pretty much are the same thing. Even got the little oiling grooves in and everything. So we're going to go ahead and use this on the inboard one, use the rubber one on the outside, and I'm assuming that'll work fine. These bushings have been so worn for so long, there's actually a big burr on the outside here, so I got to take that off first before I can fit a bushing in it. But that's what they make half-round files for. Just stuff like this. Alright, so we have the new bushing, the 3D printed bushing, the backing plate, the throttle cables going through, and all we got to do is somehow sneak these tiny little nuts in there without dropping them into the engine case. So we'll see how fast I drop them into the engine case and then what I do to fish them out. Let's see if I can balance this on my fingertips. Sometimes full-size hands are not helpful. Where's child labor when you need it? There we go. There's one. I know where child labor is. They're already in bed, and I'm out here. Ooh, I think I actually got it. Didn't even drop them in. Amazing. There. Now, let's see if it works. Yep. And not wobbly at all. So, that part's done. I think we're good there. Now, since it looks like this motor's been completely neglected, I'm going to go ahead and swap out the lower unit oil. Let's pop the drain screw out. Oh, that is straight water. That entire lower unit is just purely, entirely water. Huh, might like some oil in there. Oh, there's some oil. Yeah, I'm glad I'm changing that. Now to pop the top plug and get a little more of this substance out of here. We're gonna let that drain for a little while. Now a while back, I bought a few tubes of gear lube on clearance, so I got some kicking around. So we're gonna go ahead and fill this thing up with new lube. Now, it's interesting with the top and bottom plug, they're really small. So actually the technique on these is you put the tube, it's got a little nozzle on it, put that nozzle in the bottom hole and you squeeze it till it comes out the top hole. You put the plug in the top hole and pop this out and put the plug in the bottom one. And because of the small diameter and the thick oil and the vacuum created by this plug, you don't lose much at all. The key thing about that is make sure you have your plugs right handy because you want to put them in pretty quick. Yep, coming out the top. Squeeze it a little more. There we go. Have a drain pan under you when you do this. It gets messy. And there we go. All right. Got the plugs in. I'm going to wipe this down a bit because obviously the oil's coming out of somewhere and the water's going in somewhere. We got to get under it. There is a shaft seal on the prop. That's a likely leak spot. The way this motor looks like it's been fairly neglected, and we might be looking at 20 years of never having the oil changed. That might have been the original stuff that came out. So it might not be a bad leak, but we'll find out now. So that's all cleaned up. So if we see fresh stuff up here, we know where the leak is. Now I let this lower unit sit overnight with the new oil in it, and I don't see any active drips. So it doesn't look like these seals are that bad. Who knows, it may never have had the oil changed, and that water could have taken decades in order to fill up in there. But I'm going to try it out as is, because I know I do have good oil in it. And I probably want to flush out that water sludge mixture that was in there with another oil change pretty soon. So I'll check it and see how it looks then, and then decide if I want to do seals. For now, we're just going to use it as is. And this is sort of bothering me. Just the fact that this whole thing, if you can see, the gap is there, the gap is here. The whole thing is really loose on this pivot. So I'm just going to do some exploratory surgery and see what I got. Looks like it just unbolts in a clamshell fashion. Let's see how badly this goes. Alright, what we got is there's a rubber bushing. There's a couple of metal, looks like these are little wear pads to locate it firmly, and the rubber bushings absorb vibration. Now, it moves up and down quite a bit. More than I'd expect. And it looks like this whole surface it rides on is pretty worn. Let's pull this out of here and see what we got. Alright. Definitely see a lot of wear on the bottom of the housing here. Then these rubber bushings don't look that bad. Now these actually have a little waffle pattern inside them. I could see some wear, but it's not absurd. Well, this top level is definitely worn. You can see there's a lot of wear on this surface. There's actually a ridge there as it's worn in. That hole's clogged, so we're going to clear that out. So I'm going to clean out that one hole, grease this all up, and put it back together, because I don't see anything that I need to worry about right here. Got this all back together, slathered it with some marine grease, so it all works really smooth now. Still a little loose, but we're going to ignore that because I don't think it matters. Now I'm onto these little vent holes here. That's all completely filled with carbony soot type stuff. So we definitely got a lot out of this side, and this is the side that looked clean. This one you actually can't see through. So I'm going to clean that one too, just using a drill bit, working it in by hand. Yeah, it's still got chunks coming out, but I think we're clear enough to flow. So let's drop this down and see what we got. That's good. So I think we've got a functional outboard at this point. There's only one way to know for sure. Testing. Now in order to test this little outboard motor, I found a little boat that I can tow behind a little Jeep. So I got my whole rig here. But now, the only problem is I need to find water to put this in. And here in the desert, water isn't that easy to come by. So I sort of have to make do with what you can. So let me see what the nearest thing I can use is. Found it. I'm sure this is a good idea. Luckily my wife's at work. So I think I still might have a little bit of an exhaust issue, maybe a leak, because as I go faster, I get a little bit dizzy. Not sure why that happens. But I have a feeling once I hit an open body of water with a little more room, that'll just go away. Other than that, the motor drives fine. Pumps water nice, runs good, starts right up, idles nice. Feels like it's got decent power, but it's a little hard to open it up right now. So that means I'm gonna have to do more testing in the future. I'm pretty happy with this little motor. I spent way under $100 on it. Probably with all the parts and everything I put in, I doubt I'm even hitting 75. That's not a bad deal for something that'll get you out and have fun. But that's it for now. Obviously I had fun doing this one, and I hope you guys are having fun too. And I'm gonna move on to another project. We'll see you next time. Now I just gotta drive us back to shore. Made it.